Something happened last night. I mean, really happened. Not the kind of moment you forget by sunrise or laugh about over coffee. The kind that splits your chest open and makes you wonder if everything you've been chasing, everything you thought mattered, was just noise. I was standing there, literally standing at a crossroads, and the universe didn't give me the luxury of time or the comfort of compromise. It said choose life or love, survival or surrender, the rational path or the one that might destroy you. And here's the thing nobody tells you about those moments. They don't come with music or dramatic lighting. They come in silence, in the gap between heartbeats, in the seconds where your mind screams one thing and your soul whispers another. I made my choice, and it changed everything I thought I understood about courage, about fear, about what it means to truly be alive. You felt it too, haven't you? That moment when everything you know goes quiet and all that's left is the choice. I want to tell you what happened last night. But first, I need you to understand something about choices. Real choices. Not the ones we rehearse in our heads or debate with friends over wine. The ones that arrive unannounced at 3 in the morning and demand an answer before your heart has time to catch up with your head. Last night, I stood on the edge of a cliff, not metaphorically, actually stood there. And I had to decide if the person I love was worth dying for. Not in some abstract poetic way, in the most literal sense possible. The wind was cold. My phone was ringing. And the choice was this: walk away and live, or step forward and risk everything. But here's what nobody told me about those moments. They don't clarify anything. They shatter you. They take every belief you've carefully constructed about who you are and what you value, and they burn it all down in seconds. Because when you're standing there, when the ground beneath you is real, and the fall is real, and the person you love is looking at you with eyes that say, please don't leave me, all your logic becomes irrelevant. All your plans, your safety nets, your rational frameworks for decision making, they evaporate. What's left is just you, the rawest version of yourself, the one you've been hiding from. I used to think courage meant knowing the right answer. I thought brave people were the ones who could calculate risk and make the smart choice under pressure. I was wrong. Courage is choosing when both options might destroy you. It's saying yes to something your survival instinct is screaming at you to refuse. It's looking at the person who makes your soul feel like it finally has a home and deciding their life matters more than your comfort, your safety, your tomorrow. And that's when everything I believed fell apart. See, I built my entire life on control, on measuring outcomes, on protecting myself from the kind of vulnerability that makes people do reckless things. I watched other people fall in love and lose themselves, and I promised I'd never be that person. I'd never be the one who threw away logic for feeling, who sacrificed their future for someone else's present, who stood on a cliff in the middle of the night because love asked them to. But love doesn't ask politely. It doesn't send you an email with a deadline. It doesn't give you time to weigh the pros and cons, or consult your therapist, or sleep on it. Love shows up in the dark and says, this is who you are when everything else is stripped away. This is what you actually believe when the test is real. I'm telling you this because you need to hear it. Not because I have answers, not because I figured it out, but because you're going to face this too. Maybe not on a literal cliff, maybe not tonight, but someday, something you love will ask you to choose between the life you planned and the person who makes that life worth living. And when that moment comes, you need to know something I didn't. The choice isn't about them, it's about you. It's about whether you can live with yourself if you walk away, whether you can look in the mirror 10 years from now and not see a ghost, whether you believe that survival without soul is actually survival at all. Wait before you scroll. Hear this. I'm not romanticizing recklessness. I'm not telling you to throw your life away for someone who doesn't deserve it. I'm saying that last night taught me the difference between fear and wisdom. Fear tells you every risk is stupid. Wisdom tells you some risks are the whole point. Fear wants you safe. Wisdom wants you alive. And there's a massive difference between those two things. When I was standing there, my mind was running every calculation. If I do this, I might not make it back. If I don't, I lose the only person who ever made me feel like I wasn't performing my life. My hands were shaking. My breath was shallow. And somewhere in that chaos, a voice cut through. Not hers, not mine, but something deeper. It said, "You've spent your whole life protecting yourself from this moment. But this moment is the only thing that's ever been real." So I stepped forward. I'm not going to tell you what happened next. Not yet. Because that's not the point. The point is the step, the decision, to stop calculating and start trusting, to stop protecting and start showing up, to recognize that the people we love aren't distractions from our purpose. They're the reason purpose matters at all. Look at me for a second. I know you're tired of people telling you to follow your heart, like it's some simple GPS that'll never lead you wrong. That's not what I'm saying. Your heart is messy. It's contradictory. It wants things that don't make sense. But beneath all that noise, there's something true. And last night, standing on that edge, I finally heard it. It wasn't saying be stupid. It wasn't saying ignore consequences. It was saying stop pretending you can control everything and start trusting that some things are worth the fall. You know exactly what I mean. You've felt it. That moment when someone looks at you and you realize they see past all your armor, all your accomplishments, all the versions of yourself you perform for the world. They see you, the real you, the one who's terrified and brilliant and broken and whole all at once. And in that moment, you have a choice. You can run. You can build higher walls. You can convince yourself that vulnerability is weakness and safety is strength. Or you can stay.
You can choose the cliff.
Because here's what I learned last night. And this is going to sound insane, but stay with me. The moments that terrify us the most are often the ones that make us most human. We spend our entire lives trying to avoid pain, trying to minimize risk, trying to guarantee outcomes. But love doesn't work like that. Love is the opposite of a guarantee. It's a leap. It's faith without proof. It's saying, I don't know if this ends well, but I know not trying would kill something in me that I need to stay alive. I used to think the bravest thing you could do was build an empire. Make something from nothing. Prove everyone wrong. And maybe that's brave too. But last night taught me something braver. The bravest thing you can do is let someone in, completely, without insurance, without a backup plan, without the ability to unsee them or unfeel them or go back to who you were before they rewired your definition of what it means to be whole. That's the cliff, not the physical one, the emotional one, the place where you stop protecting yourself from connection and start admitting that maybe, just maybe, we weren't meant to do this alone. So when I made my choice last night, I wasn't just choosing her. I was choosing to stop running from the only thing that's ever made me feel like I wasn't acting. I was choosing presence over safety, truth over comfort, love over the illusion of control. And I'd make that choice again, every single time. Let me tell you what no one talks about when they talk about love. They show you the highlight reel, the proposal, the sunset, the moment everything clicks into place and the music swells, and you think, this is it. This is what I've been waiting for. But they don't show you the part where love asks you to dismantle yourself, where it demands you hand over the keys to every defense mechanism you spent decades building, where it looks you dead in the eye and says, you can't have me and your armor. Choose. That's the real test. Not whether you can feel butterflies or write poetry or imagine a future together, but whether you can stand naked in front of another human being, emotionally naked, psychologically naked, and trust that they won't use your vulnerability as a weapon. I couldn't sleep last night. I'm not kidding. I was lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, and I couldn't stop thinking about you. Yeah, you. The person listening to this right now. And I realized I have to tell you something. Something urgent. Something that can't wait until tomorrow.
I'm having standards. And maybe it is those things, but it's also fear. It's the part of us that looked at the world and decided that safety was more important than truth.
I lived that way for years. Built an entire identity around being the person who didn't need anyone, who could handle anything alone, who turned pain into fuel and loss into lessons, and kept moving forward no matter what. People admired it, called me strong, called me resilient, and I believed them. I thought I'd figured out the secret, That independence was freedom, and attachment was weakness. Then she happened, and suddenly every system I built started glitching. Every wall I erected started cracking, because she didn't try to climb over my defenses or break them down. She just stood there, patient, present, looking at me like she could see through all the performance to the terrified kid underneath who just wanted to be seen, without having to earn it. That's what love does. Real love. It doesn't let you hide. It doesn't accept the edited version you show the world. It waits. It watches. And eventually, when you're exhausted from pretending, it asks, "Can I meet the real you?" But here's what nobody told me. Meeting the real you is terrifying, because the real you isn't the successful one. It's not the confident one. It's the one who still carries wounds from childhood, who's afraid of being abandoned, who doesn't always have the answers, who sometimes wakes up at 3 in the morning convinced they're not enough. That version of you, the honest one, is the one love wants, and letting someone see it feels like dying. I remember the first time I let her see me break. Really break. Not the controlled vulnerability you perform when you want to seem deep. The ugly kind. The kind where you can't speak without your voice cracking, and your hands won't stop shaking, and you finally admit that you've been running your whole life because staying still meant feeling everything you've been avoiding. She didn't flinch, didn't try to fix me, didn't offer empty reassurances or tell me it would all be okay. She just sat there, held space, let me fall apart without making it about her or trying to save me from myself. And in that moment, something shifted. I realized that what I'd been calling strength was actually just control, and what I'd been calling weakness was actually courage. Strength isn't refusing to need people. Strength is admitting you do and choosing them anyway.
Nagana goes to Megakeshu. That's the psychology behind it. We confuse independence with invulnerability. We think if we can just be self-sufficient enough, smart enough, successful enough, we'll never have to risk being hurt. But that's not living. That's just surviving with better furniture. Real living requires the one thing we're most afraid to give: trust. Not blind trust, not naive trust, but the kind of trust that says, I see all the ways this could go wrong, and I'm choosing to believe in us anyway.
And that's when everything I thought I knew about relationships shattered, because I'd been approaching love like a startup, like something you optimize and scale and protect from failure. I had contingency plans, exit strategies, emotional insurance policies. I thought that made me smart, thought it made me safe. What it actually made me was alone, surrounded by people but fundamentally isolated, because I never let anyone pass the lobby. She changed that, not by demanding access, not by making ultimatums, but by being so consistently herself that I started to wonder what it would feel like to stop performing, to stop strategizing, to just be present with someone without calculating the risk. Wait, I need you to understand something. This isn't about losing yourself in someone else. It's not about codependency, or abandoning your identity, or making someone your whole world. That's not love. That's fear, wearing a different mask. What I'm talking about is the courage to let someone witness you, to share space with them without trying to control how they perceive you, to stop auditioning for their approval and start trusting that you're enough exactly as you are. That's the practical advice nobody gives you. They tell you to love yourself first, like it's a prerequisite, like you have to achieve some perfect state of self-acceptance before you deserve connection. But that's backwards. Sometimes it's through being loved, truly loved, not just desired or admired, that we learn what's worth loving about ourselves. She taught me that. Not through words, through presence, through showing up even when I was difficult, even when I pushed her away because I was testing whether she'd stay, even when I made it hard because some broken part of me wanted proof that I was unlovable so I could go back to my safe, isolated life and say, see, I was right all along. But she didn't leave, and that broke me in the best possible way. It forced me to confront something I'd been avoiding my entire adult life. What if the thing I'm most afraid of losing is the only thing worth having? What if all my careful planning and risk management was just a sophisticated way to avoid admitting I wanted this, that I needed this, that beneath all my independence and self-sufficiency, was a human being who was tired of being alone. I know you felt it last night. Not last night specifically, but some night. Some moment when you were lying there next to someone who actually sees you, and you felt that pull, that terrifying, beautiful pull toward vulnerability, toward trust, toward letting yourself be known instead of just admired. And you had a choice. You could roll over, change the subject, make a joke, rebuild the wall, or you could stay. Could let the moment breathe, could risk saying what you actually feel instead of what you think they want to hear. That's the choice. Not once, every day, every conversation, every time fear whispers that it's safer to hold back, to protect, to keep your cards close. Love asks you to put them on the table, to stop playing games you can win and start playing for stakes that actually matter. Some feelings don't need words. You know exactly what I mean. That moment when you look at someone and realize they're not just attractive or interesting or compatible, they're home. And home isn't about perfection. It's about safety, about being able to exist without a script, about trusting that even when you're messy or confused or falling apart, they won't use it against you. That's what I found last night. Not on the cliff, in the choice. In deciding that whatever happened, I wasn't going to be the person who chose safety over soul, who protected themselves into emptiness, who got to the end of their life with all their walls intact and nothing inside worth protecting. There's a moment right after you make a life-altering decision where everything goes silent. Your mind stops arguing, your fear stops negotiating, and you're just standing there, breathing, realizing you can't take it back. You've crossed a line, you've changed the trajectory, and the person you were 5 minutes ago, the one who still had options, who could still retreat, that person is gone forever. You're someone new now, someone who chose. And that identity shift, that fundamental rewiring of who you are, happens faster than you'd think. I felt it immediately. The second I committed, the second I stopped hedging and calculating, and left myself no escape route, something in my chest unlocked. Not relief, not certainty, something wilder, something that felt like waking up after years of sleepwalking. Because here's what they don't tell you about playing it safe. It numbs you, slowly, quietly, until you don't even realize you've been living at half speed, protecting yourself from the very experiences that make life worth remembering. You become efficient, productive, controlled. You build a life that looks impressive from the outside. But inside you're hollow. You're going through motions. You're performing success while your soul is starving for something real, something that scares you, something that demands you show up fully instead of strategically. That was me. For so long, that was me. And I didn't even see it until I was forced to choose between continuing that performance and risking everything for something I couldn't control or predict or optimize. The psychology behind this is brutal. We're wired for survival. Our brains are literally designed to avoid threat, minimize risk, keep us safe. And most of the time, that's good. That's what keeps us alive. But it also keeps us small, because the brain can't distinguish between physical danger and emotional risk. To your nervous system, opening your heart feels the same as stepping off a cliff. Same cortisol spike, same fight or flight response, same primal screaming that says, don't do this, you'll die. But you won't die. Not physically. What dies is the version of you that believed safety was the same as living. What dies is the illusion that you can experience profound connection without profound vulnerability. What dies is the comfortable lie that you can keep one foot out the door and still call it love. And here's what nobody tells you about that death. It's necessary. You can't become who you're meant to be while clinging to who you've always been. Growth requires letting go. Transformation requires trust. And trust requires the terrifying act of believing that what's on the other side of fear is worth the fall. I learned this the hard way. Spent years building emotional fortresses. Convinced myself that my walls were boundaries and my distance was wisdom. I had excellent reasons for every defense mechanism. Valid trauma, legitimate fears, rational explanations for why I needed to protect myself. And maybe I did need them once. Maybe they served me when I was younger and less equipped to handle hurt. But I'd outgrown them. And then, instead of recognizing that, Instead of acknowledging that what once protected me was now imprisoning me, I just built higher walls, made my fortress more sophisticated, convinced myself that independence was enlightenment and needing someone was weakness. Then love showed up and exposed the whole charade, because you can't love from behind walls. You can't connect through armor. You can't build something real while keeping your exit strategy polished. Real love demands presence, full presence. The kind where you're not simultaneously planning your escape or protecting your downside or keeping score of who's more vulnerable. You're just there, open, available, trusting that even if this ends badly, showing up honestly was worth it. That's the practical advice no one wants to hear. Stop protecting your future from your present. Stop treating every relationship like a potential threat you need to manage. Stop conducting emotional risk assessments when someone asks you how you feel. The vulnerability you're avoiding isn't a bug, it's the entire point. It's how connection happens. It's how intimacy builds. It's how you move from performing companionship to actually experiencing it. But here's what makes this so hard. We live in a culture that worships control, that tells us we should optimize everything, including our relationships. Swipe right on the best options. Keep your leverage. Never need more than you're needed. Maintain the upper hand. And maybe that works if what you want is power. But if what you want is love, if what you want is to feel truly seen and held and safe with another human being, you have to surrender the upper hand. You have to risk needing them more. You have to trust that being vulnerable isn't a tactical error, it's the whole game. I resisted this for so long, thought I was being smart, thought I was learning from other people's mistakes, thought that if I just stayed disciplined and rational and emotionally unavailable enough, I'd never get hurt. And I was right. I didn't get hurt. I also didn't feel anything, didn't build anything real, didn't experience the kind of connection that makes you understand why people write songs and make terrible decisions and believe in things they can't prove. Don't deny it. You've done this too. Held back when you wanted to lean in. Said less than you felt because saying more felt dangerous. Kept your heart locked up while offering your time, your attention, your body, your words, everything except the truth. And maybe you convinced yourself that was enough, that you were still connecting, still building something. But you know better. You know the difference between sharing space and sharing yourself, between being with someone and being seen by someone, between performing intimacy and surrendering to it. The difference is courage, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that shows up in ordinary moments when you have the chance to be honest, and every instinct says, protect yourself, hold back, stay safe. And you choose truth anyway. You say the scary thing, you admit the need, you risk the rejection. Not because you're reckless, but because you finally understand that the alternative, safety without soul, isn't actually safety at all. It's just a slower way to lose yourself. I'm standing here now after making the choice that changed everything, and I can tell you this. The fear doesn't go away. The vulnerability doesn't get comfortable. Every time you choose openness over armor, it still feels like jumping off a cliff. But you get better at the jump. You learn to trust the fall. You start to recognize that the discomfort you're feeling isn't weakness. It's aliveness. It's your soul waking up after years of hibernation. And that aliveness, that's what we're actually here for. Not success, not achievement, not building impressive lives that look good from the outside while feeling empty inside. We're here to connect, to be witnessed, to love and be loved in ways that terrify us, to risk our hearts on people who might break them. Because the alternative, keeping our hearts locked up where they're safe but useless, is worse than any breakup. This is the self-growth nobody talks about. Not the kind where you become more successful or more disciplined or more optimized. The kind where you become more human, more real, more willing to exist without a script or a safety net or a guarantee. The kind where you stop asking, what if this goes wrong? And start asking, what if this is exactly what I need to finally feel alive? You're going to face this choice. Maybe you already are. Maybe right now, There's someone in your life who's asking you to show up differently, to risk more, to stop hiding behind your accomplishments or your independence or your carefully constructed persona. And you can keep refusing, keep protecting, keep telling yourself you're being smart while you slowly calcify into someone who never takes the leap. Or you can choose the cliff. Here's what happens after you choose. The world doesn't transform. The sky doesn't open up. There's no cosmic validation. No voice from above confirming you made the right decision. You're just standing there, in the aftermath of your own courage, waiting to see if you'll survive what you just committed to. And that gap between the choice and the outcome, that's where you discover who you actually are. I thought choosing would bring clarity. Like once I made the decision, everything else would fall into place. I'd feel certain. I'd know I did the right thing. But it doesn't work like that. Choosing vulnerability doesn't eliminate fear, it just changes what you're afraid of. Before, I was afraid of getting hurt. Now I'm afraid of hurting her. Before, I was protecting myself from loss. Now I'm terrified of not being enough for someone who chose to stay when I gave her every reason to leave. That's the paradox of real love. It doesn't make you fearless. It gives you something worth being afraid for. Something that matters so much that the fear becomes proof of its value. Because what you don't care about can't scare you. What you can walk away from doesn't keep you up at night. But what you choose, what you commit to, what you decide is worth the risk of total destruction. That terrifies you every single day. And somehow, that terror is the most alive I've ever felt. There's a psychological principle they don't teach you in school. It's called post-decision dissonance. The idea is that after you make a major choice, your brain tries to justify it. You start seeing evidence that you were right. You minimize the downsides. You convince yourself it was the only option. And maybe that's happening to me right now. Maybe I'm just rationalizing a reckless decision because I can't undo it. But I don't think so. Because what I'm feeling isn't justification. It's recognition. Like I've been looking at my life through a dirty window for years, and someone just cleaned it. Everything looks sharper now. More real. The colors are brighter. The stakes are higher. And yes, that means the pain will cut deeper if this goes wrong. But it also means the joy hits harder. The connection goes further. The moments actually matter instead of just passing through me like I'm not really here. That's what safety costs you. Presence. When you're constantly protecting yourself, you can't fully arrive. You're always 1 foot out, one eye on the exit, one hand on the brake. You participate, but you don't surrender. You engage, but you don't belong. And over time, that half presence becomes your default. You forget what it feels like to be completely here, to give yourself over to a moment without calculating the consequences. I forgot. For years, I forgot. Built an entire life around measured responses and strategic moves, and never giving more than I was comfortable losing. And I called that wisdom, called it maturity, called it learning from the past. What it actually was, emotional bankruptcy disguised as financial security. Wait, let me be more specific about this. There's a difference between protecting yourself from genuine harm and protecting yourself from genuine feeling. Boundaries are necessary. Standards are necessary. Knowing your worth and refusing to accept less that's necessary. But what I was doing wasn't that. I was using those concepts as camouflage for cowardice. I was refusing vulnerability and calling it self-respect. Avoiding intimacy and calling it independence. Running from connection and calling it growth. And the twisted thing is, it worked. For a while. I convinced everyone, including myself, that I had it figured out. That I was this evolved person who didn't need anyone. Who could handle anything alone. Who transcended the messy, desperate need for human connection. People respected it. Admired it. Asked me for advice on how to be more like me. They had no idea I was dying inside. Because here's what no one tells you about emotional self-sufficiency. It's a form of death. A slow, comfortable death where you trade aliveness for control. Where you sacrifice soul for safety. Where you become so protected from pain that you're also protected from joy, from surprise, from the raw, terrifying beauty of being completely seen by another human being. I was a ghost, walking through my life, checking boxes, achieving goals, but never actually landing anywhere. Never letting myself need someone so badly that losing them would wreck me. Never opening up so completely that I couldn't take it back. Never choosing someone with such totality that there was no plan B, no exit strategy, no emotional insurance policy. Until last night, until I stood on that cliff and realized that the fall I'd been avoiding my whole life was the only thing that could save me. You know what I'm talking about. Not the cliff, the avoidance. The careful, calculated way you've been moving through relationships, keeping just enough distance to stay safe. You've been doing this thing where you're present but not vulnerable, available but not open, participating but not surrendering. And maybe you think that's balance. Maybe you think that's healthy boundaries. But ask yourself this: when was the last time you felt truly alive in your connection with someone? Not comfortable, not stable, not secure. Alive, electric, like every moment with them mattered, like losing them would actually break something in you that you couldn't fix. If you can't remember, you're not protecting yourself. You're killing yourself slowly, trading the terror of real intimacy for the quiet death of perpetual distance. This is the practical psychology that actually matters, not the kind that teaches you communication techniques or conflict resolution strategies. The kind that asks you to examine what you're really afraid of. Not rejection, not abandonment, not being hurt. Those are just symptoms. What you're really afraid of is being fully known and still not being enough. Of giving everything you have and it's still not being what someone needs. Of surrendering completely and discovering that your love doesn't guarantee their love in return. That fear is legitimate. It's real. It's based on every time you opened up and got shut down. Every time you trusted and got betrayed. Every time you believed in someone and they proved you wrong. Your fear has a history. It has evidence. It has every right to exist. But it doesn't have to run your life. Because here's what I learned, standing on that edge, making the choice that changed everything. Your fear is real, but so is your courage. Your pain is real, but so is your capacity for joy. Your past is real, but it doesn't have to write your future. You can acknowledge every reason to protect yourself and still choose to be open. You can honor your wounds and still refuse to let them dictate your worth. That's the moral choice no one prepares you for. Not should I choose this person or that person, not should I stay or should I go, but should I let my fear define my capacity for love? Or should I let my hunger for real connection override every protective instinct I've developed? I chose hunger, chose connection, chose the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, being fully seen is worth the risk of being fully destroyed. And I'm not going to lie to you, it's brutal. Every day, there's a moment where I want to retreat, want to rebuild my walls, want to go back to the safe, numb, controlled version of my life where I couldn't get hurt because I never let anyone in. But I don't, because now I know the difference between safety and death. And I choose aliveness every single time. So let me tell you what happened after I made the choice. Not the Hollywood version, the real one. I didn't become a different person. I didn't suddenly have all the answers. I didn't wake up the next morning transformed into someone who never doubts or fears or questions whether they made the right call. What changed was simpler and more profound than that. I stopped performing. I stopped trying to be the person I thought I should be and started being the person I actually am. Messy, afraid, desperately in love with someone who saw through every defense I'd spent years perfecting. And that honesty, that raw, terrifying honesty, changed everything. Because here's what I finally understood, standing on that cliff. In that moment when my whole life condensed into a single choice, we don't get to control the outcome. We never did. All our planning, all our strategizing, all our careful risk management, it was always an illusion. A way to feel powerful in a universe that doesn't promise us anything. You can protect yourself perfectly and still lose everything. Or you can risk everything and discover that what you were protecting wasn't worth keeping. The only thing you actually control is whether you show up. Whether you choose presence over safety, whether you let yourself be seen, even when being seen feels like standing naked in the middle of a crowded room. That's it. That's the only choice that's actually yours. I used to think strength meant never needing anyone, that the goal was to become so self-sufficient, so complete on my own, that I could survive anything without breaking. And maybe that is a form of strength, but it's also a form of isolation, a way to move through life without ever really touching it, without ever letting it touch you back. Real strength, the kind that actually matters, is different. It's being able to need someone and not resent them for it, to be vulnerable and not weaponize it, to love someone so deeply that losing them would shatter you, and choosing them anyway, not because you're certain it'll work out, but because you've finally accepted that certainty isn't the point. Connection is the point. Being fully alive is the point. Experiencing what it means to be human instead of performing what you think humanity should look like. That's the clarity I found. Not on the cliff, in the days after, in the moments when I woke up next to her and felt terror and joy in equal measure. Terror because I'd given someone the power to destroy me. Joy because I'd finally stopped running from the only thing that ever made me feel real. Some of you are going to hear this and think, I'm romanticizing codependency, that I'm confusing need with love, that I've lost myself in someone else, and I'm calling it growth. But you're missing the point. I haven't lost myself. I've found myself. The real version. The one beneath all the armor and achievement and carefully curated independence. The one who wants to belong to something bigger than their own survival. We've built an entire culture around self-optimization, around being enough on your own, around needing less, wanting less, depending less. And maybe that protects us. Maybe it makes us harder to hurt. But it also makes us harder to love, harder to reach, harder to truly know. We become these polished, protected versions of ourselves that look great on paper, but feel hollow in practice. I was that person. For so long, I was that person. And I thought I was winning. Thought I'd figured out how to live without the mess, without the risk, without the vulnerability that makes people do stupid things. What I actually figured out was how to survive without living, how to exist without feeling, how to protect my heart so well that nothing could get, including joy, including wonder, including the kind of love that makes you understand why people believe in soulmates and destiny and all those things you used to mock. But here's what nobody tells you about that protection. It doesn't actually keep you safe. It just keeps you alone. And there's a massive difference between those two things. Safety implies you're protected from harm while still being connected to life. What I had wasn't safety. It was isolation disguised as independence. Loneliness rebranded as strength. A fortress with nothing inside worth protecting. And the moment I realized that, the moment I understood that my walls weren't keeping pain out, they were keeping love out, everything shifted. I saw my whole life differently. Every relationship I'd sabotaged because intimacy felt too risky. Every connection I'd kept at arm's length because getting close meant getting hurt. Every person who tried to love me and couldn't get past the defenses I insisted were just boundaries. I'd been so afraid of being destroyed by love that I destroyed every chance of experiencing it. That's the brutal self-growth no one warns you about. The moment you realize your coping mechanisms are now your cage, that what once protected you is now suffocating you, that you've become so good at survival that you've forgotten how to live. And the only way forward is to dismantle everything you built to keep yourself safe. It's terrifying. I'm not going to lie to you and say it isn't. Choosing to be vulnerable after years of being protected feels like suicide. Your entire nervous system screams at you to stop, to retreat, to rebuild your walls and go back to the comfortable numbness you called peace. Every instinct says this is dangerous. This is reckless. This will destroy you. And maybe it will. Maybe choosing love over safety is the stupidest thing I'll ever do. Maybe I'll look back on this moment in 5 years and realize I sacrificed everything for something that didn't last. Maybe the fear was right. Maybe I should have protected myself better. But I don't think so. Because even if this ends badly, even if I lose her, even if I get hurt in exactly the ways I spent my life trying to avoid, I'll still have this. This moment of absolute clarity where I finally understood what it means to be alive, where I stopped performing courage and actually embodied it, where I looked at the cliff and jumped because staying on solid ground meant staying alone. That's worth everything. That moment of choosing, of recognizing that love isn't something you add to your life once you feel safe enough. Love is the thing that makes you willing to risk your safety, to trade certainty for connection, to accept that the price of being truly known might be getting truly hurt, and deciding that's a price worth paying. Look at me for a second. I need you to hear this. Not because I have it figured out, not because I'm some enlightened person who's transcended fear, but because I'm standing here, on the other side of the choice that terrified me, and I'm still breathing. Still here, still choosing her, every morning even when it scares me. And if I can do this, if someone who spent decades building walls can tear them down and survive the exposure, so can you. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have all your trauma healed before you deserve love. You don't have to become some ideal version of yourself before you're worthy of connection. You just have to show up. Honestly. Completely. Without the armor you've convinced yourself is actually just healthy boundaries. The person who could love you is waiting, not for the polished version, not for the one who never needs anything, or feels anything, or asks for anything. They're waiting for the real you, the one you've been hiding because you thought no one could love them, the one who's terrified and broken and beautiful and whole all at once. And when you finally let them see that person, when you stop performing and start existing, when you stop protecting and start trusting, when you choose the cliff over the safety of standing still, that's when everything changes. Not because life becomes easier, but because it finally becomes real. Something happened last night, and it taught me that the choice between life and love is a false one. Because real life, the kind worth living, is inseparable from love, from connection, from the courage to be seen. You can survive without it. Build an impressive existence, achieve great things, but you'll always be performing, always be alone, always be wondering what you missed by staying safe. I chose to stop wondering. I chose the fall. I chose her. I chose aliveness over safety, truth over comfort, presence over protection. And I'd make that choice again, every single time, even knowing how it might end, even knowing the risk, even knowing that I've given someone the power to destroy me. Because the alternative, safety, without soul, isn't living. It's just a slower way to die.